Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be here. This is the second time I've had a chance to speak at an AWS event here in Singapore, and it's the first public sector one, and every time I come, I'm amazed by the turnout. I understand there were over 1,000 registrations today, and I just find it really encouraging to see that level of interest here in Singapore and cloud technology coming from the public sector. So my name is Sumner. I work for Intel. I'm part of our industry solutions group, and I lead our team, which is focused on the public sector vertical. And today I want to talk about smart cities, but I want to do it maybe in a way that you haven't heard it from Intel before. For a company that essentially makes chips, you'd probably expect us to talk about products, even solutions. But when we think about smart cities, I think we've got to really step back and think about what cities are really trying to do with technology and what the implications are for us, not only as citizens, but city planners and city leaders. Yeah, before working at Intel, in another life, I used to be a journalist and I used to write about technology. And it always used to drive me a little bit crazy when companies talked about solutions. And when companies do that, they're referring to a bundle of software and hardware that's designed to perform a specific function. But a solution really implies that you've got a problem statement. And cities today certainly have one. And here it is. So the obvious is that cities are a primary engine of economic activity around the world. They've always played that function throughout history. But cities are transforming, and what you see here is data from McKinsey looking at the top 600 cities around the world as measured by GDP contribution, looking at 2007 actuals in 2025 forecast. And you'll see a couple of things that might jump out at you. One is that in 2007, these 600 cities were home to 485 million households with per capita GDP of around 20,000 per year. By 2025, that number is going to be 735 million with per capita GDP of $32,000. And within that number, 235 million of those households are going to be in emerging cities and emerging markets with per capita GDP of $20,000. And what that implies is tremendous change over a very short period of time with significant implications for governments, for planners, and an immediate impact on our livelihoods and the way we live. So what you see when you look around the world now is you're seeing cities trying to grapple with this transformation and get ahead of these changes through the use of technology. And this is where we're starting to see smart city deployments coming into being. And what you see when you look around the world in all these cities that are starting to do this is they're all focusing on unique priorities and goals. They aren't always the same. You can take a look at San Diego, right? San Diego's focus is they want to save costs. They want to reduce energy consumption. They want to reduce greenhouse gases. In Dubai, we see private-public partnerships aimed at improving water efficiency and energy efficiency with smart grids. And right here in Singapore, the Singapore government has articulated a very bold vision for how it intends to leverage technology to address the challenges that are facing Singapore and improve life for all the citizens and all the people who live here. But what really is smart city? When we talk about smart city, what are we talking about? Sometimes these terms are so general they don't really mean anything. But smart city at the highest level, what it implies is secure management of the resources, infrastructure, and services in a city. And within that, you're bringing together disparate data sets from different sources. You're analyzing them to extract insights that are benefiting city leaders, planners, and citizens. So from the city leaders' perspective, what they're going to get is they're going to get insight into how to better advance their policies, how to develop more effective policies, and how to be a better, more responsive government for the citizens. For city planners, it's an opportunity to understand how services are working and what they need to do differently, how to improve operational efficiency of services and scale them more broadly. And for citizens, for all of us, it's an opportunity for us to get more information from our government, better communication. It's a chance for greater civic engagement. It's an opportunity for us to have our voice heard and for there to be better two-way communication between citizens and the government. Now, we think about smart city as a development vision. What it really requires is bringing together multiple IT systems and IoT systems and integrating them into a whole. And that can mean tying together schools, libraries, hospitals, train systems, airports, power stations. Everything that goes on in the world around us, you want to have integrated, because it's through that integration that you're able to monitor what's happening. And that's where you start to realize some of the benefits that smart city can bring. So think about, from an economic perspective, the implications for competitiveness. And that's one that's very relevant here in Singapore, a small country, it has often been said, without any significant natural resources apart from its people and the human capital. You know, how can Singapore stay ahead and be competitive in the years to come? When you have systems that enable ease of access to government services, transportation is easy, it's safe, you can walk home from the train station without having to worry about being mugged or robbed. You can get into the country easily, you don't have to wait in long lines. This is the kind of environment that attracts investment. This is the kind of environment where top performers want to live. This is the kind of environment that brings companies to your country to invest. So a real benefit for competitiveness. And think about safety and security. You know, for years we've had CCTV cameras all around us. But in many cases, those cameras were just attached to VCRs, and nobody ever saw the video or did anything with it. We're now at a point where we can analyze that video in real time. And that can mean police or emergency service providers are able to respond to an incident more quickly. But it can also have other implications. You know, for example, if you have an elderly person in your home who may suffer from dementia, and if that person goes out walking and gets lost, doesn't know where they are, you know, and you're not able to find them, you know, this type of system can help you quickly identify where that person is and get them before they get scared or injured or something bad happens. So real potential benefits for cities and people alike. So when cities start down this journey and start thinking about how they can leverage technology to deliver better services and be more effective, the advice we always give them is start with an inventory of looking at what you have. What are the services that you have today? How effective are they? What data are you getting from those services? And then use that as a starting point to think about what you need to build out in the future and what you need to deliver. You'll have a better understanding of where your gaps are. And as we've worked with our partners like AWS, we've built out at Intel solutions in each of these areas that governments can take and deploy and they can integrate into their other systems. So think about smart building and energy, right? In a tropical environment like Singapore, we tend to run air conditioners a lot. If we can manage our electricity consumption more effectively, it would help us reduce costs. It would help us better manage the current infrastructure we have without having to build new power plants, say. For education, it can be about improving education, allowing kids to learn more effectively without having a lot of stress on them, for instance. You know, it could also mean for people in their mid-career, you know, as we go through a lot of transformation, some of it driven by technology, people are going to be looking to reskill themselves, to take on new careers and new challenges. These are the kinds of opportunities where city governments can leverage technology to improve outcomes. But it's not just about vision. Vision doesn't get you very far, and hope isn't a strategy, right? You know, there are a couple of things that have to be in place for smart city deployments to really be effective. And just now when I was listening to Brad talk, one of the things that really resonated with me is public sector is unique in the sense that unlike a commercial enterprise, it's not purely motivated by economic return, right? A government exists essentially to provide services and take care of the people in a city or a country. So it's pretty unique, and government organizations are typically risk averse, and that's because they've been architected to be reliable and predictable. But at a point in history where technological change is accelerating, governments need to adapt, and that's going to mean a change in culture, and that's something that the very top levels of government have to communicate down. So in terms of policy, when city leaders lay out a vision for smart city, they need to make it okay for people in the government to experiment, to leverage some of the advantages that AWS has to offer in terms of being able to get up new solutions really quickly and figure out what works and fail fast and learn and move on. You also need to have good governance, right? You need to be able to actually execute what you want to execute. And that means having the right skills and the right people inside of government. And then above all, you need to have financing. If the funds aren't available to actually execute and deploy and scale the services, what we tell our customers, maybe it's not the right time to go down this path. You've got to step back and make sure you've got all three of these things in place before you really embark on this journey. Earlier, I talked about the need to integrate disparate IT systems and IoT systems, and that has some pretty important implications for the underlying IT infrastructure that you build out to support these services. Intel, we're in the unique position of being perhaps the only company that can literally touch everything from the edge back into the cloud. There are very few companies that have the ecosystem partnerships and reach that Intel does. And when we think about the building blocks required for smart city infrastructure, we look at it in these four areas: edge and smart solutions, networking, the connectivity for how you move data around, the cloud, which is where the processing happens, where the storage takes place, and then the data and the analytics and the insights, which is the real value that comes out of some of these solutions. You get all of these together and you build out the right infrastructure, then you're laying the groundwork for effective city services. I mentioned earlier that we're in a time of technological change, and you've probably seen companies talk about this number before, but we're at a point now where there's significant technological disruption happening in every industry, including public sector, and it's not going to slow down. It's only going to accelerate. And part of that change is this proliferation of smart and connected devices. 50 billion, it's a lot. The question for government is, how are you going to manage these devices, the data they're going to generate? How will you extract insights in a timely manner to act upon? What will you do differently? At its heart, smart city is really about planning for the future. It's really about looking ahead and thinking about what kind of city do we need to have 5, 10 years in the future. And a key part of that is embracing the technological change that's coming. So take 5G, for instance. 5G is the next generation wireless standard. It offers higher capacity, faster speeds, and lower latency than 4G. You need that kind of connectivity to support those billions of devices that are going to be deployed around the world. AI and machine learning. This is the ability to extract insights from data, but it's also more. Increasingly, we'll see machines that can sense and understand and adapt and react to what's going on around them. This is AI, and we're really just starting this journey. And Intel is absolutely committed to being a leader in this space, and we're investing very heavily to make sure that we have the technology leadership that our customers are going to need to effectively deploy solutions with this technology. You need to have a scalable infrastructure. As Brad mentioned, none of us can forecast with any accuracy what kind of compute infrastructure you're going to need for specific services when those services haven't been invented yet. So partners like AWS offer important capabilities that allow you to deploy solutions with the confidence that you can scale it up as you need to very quickly in the future. Then there's autonomous vehicles. And this one, I think people tend to undercall the impact in two ways. I think one, we tend to undercall how fast this is going to happen. You'll start to see these on the road within 5 years, and I think the adoption's going to happen very quickly after that. And the implications for city planners, particularly here in Singapore, are pretty significant. 12% of Singapore geographically is road. Singapore is a small country. We physically cannot build more roads. So the question, what the government is working through, is how do you maximize your existing infrastructure to get a growing population around more efficiently than we can today? It's a big question, and autonomous vehicles offer an opportunity to do that in a way where maybe everyone doesn't need to own a car, right? If you're in Singapore, your car may be your most valuable item that you own, if not your second. They're expensive, right? And it probably sits, unused 95% of the day. It's not a great economic return. So autonomous vehicles offer the opportunity to take ride sharing even further. And that means that shopping malls, offices, condos, they won't necessarily need car parks, right? If cars are constantly moving, they may not need to be parked all the time. So some real significant technological change that's coming. So when we work with partners like AWS and others, what we've done is we put together a framework. And this is a highly abstracted view of our city services framework. And it really has 6 areas that are designed to help city leaders and planners work through the requirements to architect, design, and deploy smart cities. And you can see kind of what some of the major buckets are, right? So edge devices, right? Those are the cameras and the sensors, things that are pulling data back into the cloud. It's the e-services. It's the solutions. What are you offering your citizens? What problems are you solving? It's the compute. It's the cloud. It's the storage. How will you manage this data, which in some cases will be at exabyte scale? How do you effectively manage that without entirely blowing your budget? And then there's a question of analytics, but above all, security. You know, a lot of the data that gets managed in public sector is incredibly sensitive. Healthcare data, public safety information. You know, you really have to think how that data is secured, how it's protected. And then we always encourage our customers, governments, and public sector organizations we work with to really focus on open and industry standards when they're deploying technology. You know, it's really important that you're taking a horizontal approach when you're looking at smart city applications, because if you take a very verticalized focus, there's a risk of vendor lock-in with the risk of potentially higher costs and lower flexibility and a less good outcome in the future. So these are 6 areas that we really focus on when we're engaging with our customers and how they design and implement some of these solutions. And then on top of this, what we do is we will then work with AWS to develop specific solutions that are designed for a use case. And I'll give you one example. So this is an example from Korea. It's an AWS cloud-based digital video surveillance system. And this is on display at the Cloud Innovation Center in Busan that was mentioned earlier today during the keynote. And this, I think, is a great example of the power in the partnership between AWS and Intel. AWS has the cloud infrastructure and the storage, and video is going to require a lot of data storage, if nothing else, but also the compute to analyze video in real time. What this particular solution does is it gives you the ability to do facial recognition and people counting. And a potential application could be, in an office building, you no longer require people to have a badge to swipe in or swipe out. The system automatically recognizes them. It can count how many people are in the building at any time, which, if there was a fire or something, is information that the Civil Defense Force would find really important to do their job effectively. But how we brought this together was Intel was able to pull together our other ecosystem partners for the gateways, for the cameras, the fire detection sensors. We combined that with the AWS cloud, and this is the outcome. Now, I also talked about the importance of having open standards, and this isn't the only digital video solution that Intel offers in partnership with AWS. You can actually go out into the demo showcase. We have a similar offering from Hitachi, which you can check out. But these are examples of what's possible when Intel and AWS work together with our public sector partners, our ecosystem partners, to develop relevant and impactful solutions for smarter cities. So I guess just in closing, just a final thought. I think from Intel's perspective, and certainly my perspective, when I look at smart cities and I look at what cities are grappling with and the kind of change that's going to be coming in the next 5 to 10 years, I really see smart city as part of a virtuous cycle of economic growth and shared prosperity, something that's important to Singapore and cities around the world. And we'd love to have a deeper conversation with you about some of the challenges you're working through and how AWS and Intel can help you. So thank you very much.